Welcome, everybody. We are, as my husband just walks in the door, we are so excited to be doing our 21 Laws of Leadership. This is such a great book. I know this is either my second or third time going through it. Last week was great. This week is on chapters 3 and 4. Hopefully, you've read those or had a chance to go over them. I'm going to be pulling out some of the things that really stuck out to me. And I know that everyone has a different perspective when they do these things. I'm going to pray just really quick before we start. Lord, I thank you so much for this team. We just pray, Lord, that as we invest our time in growing as leaders and reading and learning from others, that we would just be able to be aware of what we need to change, and that we will just yield to the process, and then we will then grow to be good navigators and leaders. And we just thank you for tonight. Help us to say and do all the things that we need to, in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so the law of process. My favorite stories that stuck out, obviously, Teddy Roosevelt. I love him. We've read his biographies. We've always done biographies as a family, but I just really appreciate when people have struggled and you see what they do with their the process of their life. Some of the things that I wanted to share quickly before we get into that. Um, when we see people as leaders in our life, when you're thinking of people that are successful, you don't see what happens behind the scene day in and day out, day in and day out. So I love this phrase, this statement here. You can map out a fight plan or a life plan, but when the action starts, you're down to your reflexes. That's where the road work shows. If you cheated on that in the dark of the morning, you're getting found out now under the bright lights. This is referring to boxing. But in our daily preparations, Tiger Woods was said to hit 1,000 balls a day. I don't know if he does that still, but he became the greatest golfer. I think he still is, that we've known, that the world is known. But it's that daily routine. I know that Brittany Howard had done a video on, we've shared it, Megan shared it with us, and then we shared it with our teams on consistency was one of the biggest things that stuck out to me. And one of the phrases that she used was the mundane, mastering the mundane. And so that's part of what we're talking about with this whole process. So there are points to it, but I wanted to share a little bit about Roosevelt. And the thing that stuck out to me, again, I had read his book with my family on his biography, and this just was a good refresher for me. But when he was 12 years old, his father told him he has a mind, but not the body. And without the help of the body, the mind can't go as far as you should. So you must make the body. So I found that so intriguing, and make it he did. So Teddy Roosevelt decided he was going to live by the law of process, probably without even realizing that, right? He was going to be doing the things that he needed to do to be able to have his body meet his mind. His mind was strong. He was going to do that thing that he needed to do to be able to be strong in his life and get the results that he did. Well, and if you know, if you haven't read about Teddy Roosevelt, it's very encouraging. You need to read his biography. But look at what he did when you read down further, all of the things that he did as a president. But it's that time that you don't see of what he was doing in preparation to be able to get to that point. It is so important that we think that way, that it's it's the people that you see on the leaderboard. Let's talk about our industry. You see the names on the leaderboard, you think, oh, they always get that. Or maybe it encourages you, maybe you're in a place where it discourages you rather than encourages you. But we need to realize that they were doing a process. They were submitting to the process. They were yielding to the process long before they were ever on the leaderboard, long before they ever reached that rank. It didn't just happen by magic. It was not just, they didn't get lucky. Teddy Roosevelt was born to a wealthy family, but physically he was sickly. He wasn't lucky physically, but he chose to submit to a process so that he could then be successful physically and mentally, to be able to do what he ended up doing, being one of our greatest presidents. So I love thinking about events. We talk in this industry, and we've heard a lot of our leaders say, which I agree with, by the way, leaders are born at events. That is very true. And if you've never been to, I'm just going to put a plug into convention. If you've never been to convention, Nashville will be fun and amazing. It's a fun city. Get to convention. You want to earn Leaders Retreat. You want to do all the things that Plexus offers us. Okay, so that just goes without saying. But I want you to see, and in the book, I found this very interesting reading it this time around, the growth that I have seen, and actually being more aware of my strengths and my weaknesses so that I can identify and then grow. And we'll talk about that in the processes. But I found it very interesting where at an event it encourages decisions, but a process encourages development. So what we're doing now, this is part of our process of growing. We're engaging in this either live or you're watching the recording. You're engaging in this process for growth. That should be encouraging you. Number two, an event motivates people, but a process matures people. And I will tell you that just full disclosure, because I grow when people share their weaknesses. That's just how I grow. Because if they're successful and they share their weaknesses, I always think if they can do it, so can I. So when I went to convention this year, I did implement some of the things. I got really excited. We all get excited. But then life happens and summer happened. And then I had my eye injury and surgery. I will tell you what has changed for me has been the process. It every time. Now, you don't have to go to an event, but if you get a hold of the process, it's going to feed motivation. You'll end up going to an event because you're doing the things. And then that motivation is going to encourage you in that process. So it just goes round and round. It's going to feed into that. And so some of us, Jules, are in a diamond sprint group where I was very hesitant to even do it because I heard about it before going to Kona. And I just had my eye thing and I'm like, I guess I'm going to do it. So you have to like apply or, like try and get in the group because I was pressured by some of my friends. And so I said yes to doing that. And then thinking, I don't even know if I'm going to get in the club, And so I will tell you that I do work well, a little bit of pressure, back pressure, which is stressful. The older I get, I'm almost like, okay, I don't know if I like this all that well, but it's the daily things. It's doing those things that I once did. It's the process. So you don't have to go. If you're saying, oh, I can't get to Nashville, so what? Do the process. You'll end up getting there because the process is going to feed that inspiration. The inspiration feeds the process. So I just wanted to share that. When I saw that, I thought, I'm living that right now because I'm in the middle, getting toward the middle of the 90 days, this group that Amy and Angie and I are in. I'm not sure who else is in that for the Jewels, but it's just for Jewels right now. And so it's amazing. It's encouraging, but it's also holding our feet to the fire. It's a process that's trying to grow us as leaders. So an event is a calendar issue, but a process changes people. And an event is easy. It's easy to go and be wowed and be excited, but a process is difficult, but it's worth it. So it all works together. And when I was reading that, I thought, oh my word, this totally works together. Okay, so let's look at process. Well, before we do that, I want to just ask a couple of questions. I'm trying not to go so fast because I tend to talk really fast when I get excited. So I'm going to slow down. Everyone has a potential, and I want everyone to hear that tonight. We all have the potential to be a leader, but we have to realize it's not accomplished overnight. Why do we think that when we look at this industry and it's a small amount of people that make it, you look and you say, oh, there's not that many people. Well, it's growing all the time because people learn and they grow and they want to yield to that process. Leadership does not develop in a day. It takes a lifetime. So you've heard the phrase, leaders are readers, leaders are learners. Leaders do not grow overnight. And so we have to be patient. We have to yield to the fruit of the spirit, which would be patience. We need to be consistent. And that's why the process is so important, because you're not going to grow as a leader unless you're going to yield to that process. It's like the diamond. The diamond is not made overnight. It's a process, right? So I want to ask you, and we know that it's this quote here in the book, the secret of our success is found in our daily agenda. And so I've always had a planner, but I've been notorious at filling out my planner, the calendar, and then not looking at it again. So like I would think, oh, I did that, I'm done. So now, since I've been doing this new process, I am filling out my calendar and then putting reminders on my phone, and also then looking at my calendar. I'm not perfect at it, and I'm still missing things, but that's not the point, right? We're going to see that. We're going to learn from that. It's yielding, it's doing that process. So I want to ask you a question, and then you can type in the chat um, your answer. But who do you admire? And this is one of these questions in your profession or area of service. So thinking about, let's, I know we're all talking about Plexus, right? That's what our industry is. And I know a lot of us work on the side as well, but thinking about actual Plexus, who do you admire and why is this person inspirational? So I see some of you on here, and does anyone want to unmute and just kind of chime in? Who do you admire and why? Why are they inspirational to you?
I'll jump on. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna say Justin and Megan because I had one child when he was at home and now he's off at college, but I struggled with getting my Plexus in, like as far as messaging and stuff. So as many kids as they have, and I think that that's just inspirational that you can fit all that in. You've got it all together. And sometimes, I have another job and work as well, but sometimes it's just hard to struggle to get it all in. So
That's good. I like that. Roberta said everyone so far. That's great. Anyone else before we're going to move on and have another? Anyone else before we? And then this was another question that I thought was very interesting because it doesn't matter how, oh, I see Melody, so good. When I was a teenager babysitting for a women's Bible study, I will always remember Cecilia who picked me up and took me home. She was warm, friendly, organized, looked lovely. She treated me so kindly and like a grown up. I will never forget how she made me feel. That is so good. And we do remember how people make us feel. It's interesting. It's awesome. So you admire Cecilia. That's good. You still admire her. That's awesome. And I was thinking today too, in preparing and just thinking about how we are in the people business. And so we want to make people, regardless of a yes or a no, we want to leave people with a good feeling about themselves and about their experience with however they communicated with us. And then thinking about the people that settle for less, those people that we know, it doesn't matter how long you've been in this industry, the longer that you're in it, the more no's you're going to get, and the more people that you're going to see on your team that maybe you're disappointed with. So I think we can all relate to that. Is there any circumstance or situation you can think of? I know I'm thinking, my goodness, probably all of us on here, where you feel so frustrated because they don't see it or they're settling for less. They could have achieved more. Those feelings that you feel for those people. Can anyone relate to that? I know that and I was sharing this with Amy and Angie, I think, when we want it so badly for somebody else, but you can't make people do anything. And it's very easy to get discouraged because that person is not wanting it as much as you want it for them. And that's okay. That's just being able to say, well, there's no pressure. You just need to be able to bless. We always hear that bless and release, but it's very true to be able to see that. I love where he shared, is it Warren Bennis and Bert Nanis made a discovery about the relationship between growth and leadership. And they said it's the capacity to develop and improve their skills that distinguishes leaders from their followers. Successful leaders are learners, and the learning process is ongoing. It's a result of self-discipline and perseverance. And I love this. This is so encouraging to me because we're not going to get good overnight. You look at the athletes, you look at performers, they did not get where they are now overnight. I think of my mother-in-law who is now 76, and she knows more of the Bible than anyone that I know, can quote more scriptures, and she prays all the time. She didn't get there overnight, and she's reminded me of that so much. But I love this quote. And the goal each day must be to get a little better to build on the previous day's progress. And that points us back to the process. If we're not doing the process, then I can't get a little bit better every day if we're not doing it. But if I am doing it, I can get better every day. Melody rather says, hard to detach emotions. So true. That's so good. Sometimes it's a timing thing. Absolutely. You're right. And we have to remind ourselves um, it's not immediate results. It's a timing thing. That's good. You've got to remind yourself, because then discouragement can set in when we're thinking, well, we are in a microwave drive through, um, instant everything. You can push a button and order and have it delivered to your door. So that makes we become narcissistic. It's easy to do that. Um, we can become people that we're thinking, I'm going to ask them and they're going to say yes. Well, and there is all this, you want to be positive in your mindset, but we have to realize I got to network marketing, um, commitment to the process, be okay. Yes. Embrace the process, right? I remember Brooke Hemingway saying that, to learn to love it. And I remember saying, I don't love the process, but you might not love it, but you've got to yield. You got to be okay. This is what we do. And this is the best, um, industry out there. It really is. Like, we are so blessed. Okay. Phase 1. I don't know what I don't know. I think of this, when you fail to realize this, it makes me think of a teenager or a very young adult when they think they know everything, but they really don't know what they don't know. They have no idea all the things that they don't know. So there's a lot of people that are in this category. And so they might have the desire, might have been, if they had been talked to other people, maybe they would have learned, but they really don't know what they don't know. That's phase 1. Phase 2 is, I know that I need to know. And so this is realizing that we need to learn how to lead. So every one of us on this call, we are all leaders. When you have one person that is following you, you are a leader. And so in phase 2, it's when you say, okay, I need, I'm realizing there are some things that I don't know. And it's a lot of times it's when you are put in a position of leadership and you have other people. It can be a supervisory position. It can be in any sphere of influence, but this is what happens. And I like what he's talking about here when he says, we realize that we need to learn to lead. And of course, that's when it's possible for the process to start, when we actually say, there's things I don't know, and I need to learn, how to lead. There's this spark of interest that grows. And so probably there's many of you on this call that are watching, that maybe there's some of you that says, yep, I'm realizing that. There's look at phase 3. I know what I don't know. And so this is when it gets really good. When you start learning, when you're watching training calls, when you are on Zooms, when you are reading these books, and you start saying, okay, I know what I don't know, and I need to get a plan for personal growth. And you'll see, Justin and Megan have mentioned many times that, getting a life coach, doing whatever you can do at this time to grow, but getting a plan for personal growth. And you know what, there's a lot that I don't know. I need to find out how I can become a better leader. So you can see how the phases, you're growing in these phases. And then you look at phase 4. You know what you need to do, you grow, and then it starts to show. This is when you see what the people have. You can't see what they've been doing in the dark, but this is when you see the results from people. They've been in phase 4. They actually know what they know that they don't know, right? And they're like, okay, I've got to get a plan, and I have to submit to this process, and then I'm going to grow in this. And so this is, again, this growth takes a lifetime. We have to realize that this personal growth is not just about winning a contest. It's not about that. Personal growth is about you adding value to others and being able to, be patient enough and be committed. I think of, anybody see the Jason Bourne movies? Will you commit to the program? Okay, wasn't a good program, but nonetheless, the question was asked over and over again, will you commit to the program? I think it was program, right? Will you commit? And I remember thinking, commit. So that's me asking you tonight, will you commit to this process? Will you commit to the program of personal growth and development? Now, I wish that I could say that I've always done the process and I've always yielded, because life is filled with ups and downs. But there's one phrase when we went to Bible college that my husband and I, one of our instructors, shared, and literally they taught, we were there, and you've all these classes, there's this one phrase that I remember that at one time in my life I had written it down and had it on my refrigerator, but I memorized it so I can just tell you. And it's: consistency produces more results than intense effort. Every single time. It'll trump it every time. That consistency in the process. So phase 4 people, they know, they grow, and then it's going to start to show. And phase 5 is awesome because it is simply go because of what I know. When you're in phase 5, you've got the instincts and you're leading your team. And my husband is a phase 5 leader. I can see that. We've been in ministry for, it'll be 30 years, I think this year, maybe 31. He is a phase 5 leader. He instinctively leads. He's able to navigate, but it comes through many mistakes. It comes through many hardships, and you've got to have grit to be able. When you look at those leaders that are doing the things, I mean, when you look at Justin and Megan, they've had many times of discouragement. They've had many no's. They've had many opportunities to quit along the way. And that's how it is with every single leader. But I can promise you, whenever I'm around Megan, especially because obviously we're girls, we talk more, and Justin as well. But in Kona, that was a marked time for me, because when we sat and talked together, it always amazes me when you see a good leader and they don't make the process look hard, although they're truthful about that. We're going to get into that in navigating. But when you're around a good leader that actually they do the things day in and day out, it's obvious. It's obvious by their life, by their disciplines, and that's part of these processes. So I want to discuss it and ask you some questions and see, those of you that I hope many of you got the workbook, because I really find that the questions in here are it allows you to be self-reflective, which is, I think, takes time, slowing down to think about and being honest. I'm telling you, when I started Plexus 7 years ago, and I would do these, I just did these things because Megan would ask us to do them. But I'm telling you, when I would answer these questions, I wasn't always honest because I wanted to put down the right thing. Okay. I thought I was being honest, but then because in the process, I didn't know what I didn't know. And then you start learning, you go, oh my word, I really didn't know that. Now I've got to know that. The process is moving. So it's interesting when you do that. So I'm looking at my older answers and I was like, oh my goodness, this is interesting. But I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. And that is, they're all good. But question number 4 was this: what steps do you see other leaders in your organization taking in order to become better leaders? So these seems like, well, these are no brainers, but I think it's interesting. It's good to think about it, because we always think about them achieving goals, or they're doing great. They're doing all these things, but actually, no, what are they doing to get those results? Does anyone want to share that?
Well, I think like things like this, when we see Megan showing up for team calls or showing up for book studies, she's not just saying you guys need to do this, she's doing it too. And so I think, and so I like when a leader doesn't think that they've arrived yet. Like, I'm there, so just, follow me to the tippy top. Like, they're always learning, always, so kind of like, not do as I say, but do as I do. Kind of like a parent, right? We tell our kids, like, do as I say, don't do as I do. But I love watching our leaders. If Megan still needs to read personal development books, then goodness, I surely still need to do as well. Jessica Heffley still needs to be on coaching calls. Surely I still need to do that as well. And so I just really appreciate that.
That's good. I think that's what holds so many people back. And I've seen that in church as well. When you think that you've done this for so many years, it's one thing I always share people with this specific topic, I think about your mom, Megan, when one of the times that your mom visited us in our church, and it just always sticks out to me. And so her mom is about 10 years older than me. So I've always looked at her and thought, I've always admired her and thought, oh, I want to be like her someday. You know, she's just amazing. And so one of the things that stuck out to me was that I know that she's been faithful in church and to the word, and she knows the word of God, and she loves the Lord. And so she's sitting, I just have this memory etched in my mind, and she came to visit us, and she came to church with us, and she was so encouraging. She's sitting there taking notes. Um, and this was a specific class after church, and it was some young guy that was teaching it. And so in my mind, I was like, here she is. She's mature in the Lord. She's been doing this for a long time, and she's taking notes from this young whippersnapper. And I was just amazed by that. And that is humility. You can't do that without humility. And so that, just to piggyback on what you're saying, Amy, I totally agree with that. And that speaks volumes to your team and to those around you. So that's really good. Okay. So you need a plan for personal growth. So I don't know if you guys have written that out. It doesn't need to be, don't get scared by that, but I encourage you that you're doing this. So stay the course and finish this. This is huge for personal growth and being honest with yourself. One of the things that he talks about is the culture of your team. And so whether you have a large team and maybe you say, I don't have workers on my team, doesn't matter, because you can create the culture. What do people feel like when they are around you? That's a culture that you're creating. Are they encouraged, or do they get discouraged? Do they feel pressured, or do they feel at ease? That's all part of a culture that you can create on your team. And it starts with you and your relationships. So I want to move on to now the law of navigation. And this one was really good. I love the quote here from the author of the book, Leroy Elms, Be the Leader That You're Meant to Be. He wrote this, and this is so good about the law of navigation. A leader is one who sees more than others see, who sees further than others see, and who sees before others do. So, and you can also become this. Again, this is a lifetime, and it's easy to get lazy in our giftings. And it doesn't matter what, whether it's a skill, musical ability, or being an athlete, or in this industry. You can be good at something naturally, but you're going to learn as you go through those processes. That's not going to take you all the way. You can do it for just so long, and then you're gonna reach your lid. And then that lid is good, because then you're going to be able to go, oh, I need to grow. And humility will say, I'm going to bust through that lid. But the only way that you're going to bust through a lid is by yielding to that process, but then also seeing, okay, I'm going to learn from other people. And on page 32, where it says take action, I did that. I did not do that this time, and I want to do it again. But to interview someone and to talk and ask them, somebody that is successful, that would be somebody that you look up to, and ask them how they did it, and then try and do, read one of the books that they read, or do one of those things. That's really good. Because again, it's encouraging to talk to somebody that's been there, done that you're seeing success in their life. But to the navigation part, I felt like this was very interesting, because a leader will see before others see, and they're going to figure out a way. They're not going to just, and this in the book where he talks about the explorers and the difference between the two and the successes, and that's very interesting. That was really great to see that. But one of the things of navigation is to be strong in navigation. You got to see obstacles before people see them, and you need to be able to know how to respond. And so in this industry, it's super important that we can be honest with people in that. And I'm going to get to that in just a second, because I just got ahead of myself. Before good leaders take their people on a journey, they go through a process in order to give the trip the best chance of being a success. So navigators draw on past experiences. And I think that when we think about failures and mistakes, sometimes we can be embarrassed, humiliated. And there are times, when you make mistakes, you've got to just you get two options. You either quit or you keep going. or if you get discouraged and you say, oh, this isn't ever going to work, your failures are going to teach you your greatest lessons. And I totally, yeah, I love that. Fail forward. So you said your goals. Let me see. I just want to read a little bit. I'm missing some of this. Listen to podcast training of some sort. Read. Yes, that's so awesome. Read Bible. Everyday reading. I love that. Always learning. And it's interesting because I feel like now that I'm doing the 90-day sprint, my day is, and I'm still doing the same things, right? I'm a little bit busier in the fall, but I am doing so many of these things, which is so good. It is so good for you at the end of the day to look back and say, what did I do to get better, to be able to add value to others? And through our mistakes, I was just thinking about how we don't remember the right answers that we got on the test, right? We remember the wrong answers. And I was thinking about when I wasn't able to do driver's ed when I was young. And so we could go study and then go take a written test and get our driver's permit. And then when you turned 18. And so I waited till I was 18 to do that. And so I remember studying and I failed the first time. And it was embarrassing, but I can tell you exactly one of the questions that I failed on. And it was this. Is it more slippery when it rains a lot or when it just begins to rain? I can tell you the answer to that because I got that answer wrong. And it was when it just first starts to rain. I learned from that mistake. And so we've got to have that. A leader will, and a navigator, we are going to be able to look and say, I'm going to learn from that. I'm going to fail forward. This is not going to keep me down. The successful leaders have failed a ton. They have made a lot of mistakes. They have offended people. They have said things the wrong way multiple times. That's the truth. We see the successful people like the Christmas present with the beautiful bow before it's opened. Everything looks great because they're achieving those things that we want to achieve. But the truth is they have failed a ton because we are human. And even though we have skill sets and we have certain personalities, you can look, just the people that are on this call and you can say, this person might be gifted here, or they may be gifted there, but you don't see many times where they're lacking. And when you get around someone for a period of time, you're going to see, when you're around me for a period of time, you'll see where I'm lacking, but you're going to see, you need to just understand that leaders have failed a ton. And the difference is they don't stay there. They're not going to get into self-pity, which really is a form of pride. They're not going to just stay there and have it be all about themselves. Because the minute you start thinking that way, you are not being focused on others. And then leadership, why be a leader? Because it's about other people, right? When you truly want to have a heart of a leader that thinks about others like Christ, right? Thinks about us and his example in the Bible. We are about others. And that's what this industry is, the best industry for that. Like it is completely, you can't do this on your own, nor would you want to do this on your own. When we were in Kona this year, Amy and I were like, we have to bring more Jules. Megan talked about that. We've got to have more people from one team with us in Mayakoba next year because it's more fun. You don't do this by yourself. So we know that we learn that way. So navigators draw on past experiences and they examine the conditions before making commitments. And this is huge, before making commitments, to be able to say, is this, you've got to look at finances, resources, and talent, but also intangibles, timing, morale, momentum, culture, and so on. So, and this is part of that intuitively knowing what the team needs. But this begins with you intuitively knowing. And I'm Megan has shared that many times, like just as a leader, sometimes you just, as you grow, you are going to be more intuitive, but it starts here on these pages when you're like that with yourself and you just know, okay, I need this. You don't always feel like it. It's like eating your vegetables. You don't always feel like eating the vegetables, but you just know, I got to have a green with this meal. Okay. I craved lollipops while in Kona, and that's not a joke. I don't know why I did that. I literally, Megan and Amy will attest to that. I ate them like crazy. I had to give the lollipops up. Okay. I intuitively knew I had to stop having lollipops, but seriously, navigators will examine those conditions. And in my life, I've not always been good. It's been, and it starts with us. So I've always been quick at saying yes, 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 because I want to be able to do that. Shave ice every single day. Yes, you did. That was delish. It was worth it though. But learning to, and this isn't really a fun process. These processes we might not love. Just because you don't love these things doesn't mean you don't do them. Just because they're not your first, your highest in your what's the word I'm looking for? Your skill set, but there's that test that you do. Just because it's not the highest number, it doesn't matter. You still have to do these things to be a good leader. We're going to get better in these areas. So learn that. And the navigators listen to what others have to say. You care about your team. You want to hear what they think. We want to not rely on ourselves. It's no fun to do this by yourself, right? You got to have your team with you. And it starts with you leading yourself. And then when you have 1 or 2 people on your team and you have 20 people on your team, when you lead by example, you include them in the conversation. It is a lot more fun. It's like that with our families. When you sit down and you kind of debrief or you talk, we want to include people in the conversation. They make sure their conclusions represent both faith and fact. This has been something that I really did not do well with in the beginning with my business in Plexus. Being able to navigate for others requires a leader to possess a positive attitude, which I always had a major positive attitude. Everything looked awesome, but I wouldn't always look at it in that truthful sense that it's hard. And so I want to share with you some of the things at the Brittany Howard. She has videos for this, which are great on YouTube. And so I was watching that and I thought this was really awesome. And so I wrote down some of these things because there's an answer for all of these things. And if we're not prepared and we have our people on our team, I don't care if they're not silver yet or if they're on their way to gold or beyond, they have all dealt with these thoughts. And so I'm just going to read some of these. She had not an exhaustive list, but a very large list. So these are struggles that your new person is going to deal with, that we've all probably dealt with. And if we haven't dealt with all these, we will multiple times. Number 1, they're going to struggle with rejection. They just will. And so we just need to tell them outright, we've got an answer for that. You're going to get rejected, but you can overcome that. Okay. That's just the answer. And I always, I'm like, what does that say about me? I'm encouraged when people share that they didn't do well. If I see someone that made it to the top and they're like, it was easy. This was so easy. I didn't have a hard time at all. Then I would be like, next. I got nothing from you. Next. That does not encourage me in the least because it feels hard and heavy right now. When life gets hard, we got to have encouragement. And so when I see someone and they're like, yeah, I didn't rank that month. If I see a leader that can say, or I struggled this month, or I didn't sign that many, but I was able to, yield to that process, that encourages me because I know that they didn't get from discouragement to encouragement without having this space right here where they yielded and submitted to the process. Okay. So we have an answer for rejection. The second one, they're going to struggle with people ignoring them. Yeah, they're going to get ghosted. You're going to send messages. You got to tell Sally Sue, it's going to happen. And that's okay. You're just going to move on. And the next one, they're going to experience fear from taking action. When in a funk, engage. I like that little phrase. When you feel like you're, and I can't tell you the times that I didn't engage, and I yielded to the fear that caused me to not take the action. And then they're going to struggle with follow up. They just will. We all have struggled with follow up. Some of us have struggled with more of these things than others, but they're going to struggle with feeling like are loved by them. I think I have struggled with that for 7 years on a daily basis. And that's one of those things. It's like an angst in me. But the more you do it, the little struggle gets less and less. And you just like, oh yeah, that it bugs me, but it's okay. We're going to keep doing it. They're going to struggle with their belief in their products when their person says, I didn't lose weight, so I'm shutting off my subscription. What do you do with that? Because that's going to happen. Not everybody keeps their subscriptions on, right? We figured that out. I remember when I first started, I was like, this is awesome because look at all their subscriptions. No white lines. And there's lots of subscriptions in our set. That's just part of it. You deal with it, right? We grow, we work through it. They're going to struggle with, this is a huge one. And Amy has an awesome answer. I love how Amy's always dealt with this when they talk about pyramid schemes. Okay, pyramid schemes are illegal, people. Do you even know what that is? So when they say that Plexus is a pyramid scheme, I always want to question, do you understand what you're saying right now? Because we are totally legal. So, and very successful and leaving a legacy company. But here's the deal. When you know these things right up front, you learning these things, when you go through these struggles, then you can give the answer to the person. If you don't have the answer to give your new person, it's discouraging for them. In other words, struggle with consistency. They're going to say their warm market is, I have no more warm market. I have no motivation, struggle with long-term vision or influence, and the list goes on and on. So the answer to that is acknowledging that, being truthful, but then having the answers to help them navigate through these processes. And sometimes we're going to have to go that wrong audience. Yeah, that's so good. Yes, get-togethers. That's so good. And so in-person events, and even like, and if you can't do it in person, on Zoom, chatting with people and talking to them, getting them on the phone. I've been doing that lately. Get them on the phone, get them on a video chat or FaceTime when they're discouraged. And I have found too that the mentorship, don't you think, Megan, that it is, I feel like we make it so big in our minds that it feels like you have to carve out this huge amount of time. And I remember it might have been, I don't know if it was 3 weeks ago now, but you and I were talking over Marco Poloing, and I was having these epiphanies as we were talking. And I'm like, this is awesome. We're not even like, it's not a Zoom. It's not even a FaceTime. We're doing it over Marco Polo. And I just had my coaching session. So I just feel like that's so encouraging when you think you can do this for people. We can be honest. We can tell them the facts, and you're normalizing everything. So balancing the optimism, the realism, the intuition, the planning, the faith. It is difficult because I'm always the rah, 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 but you've got to bring in these other things so that they're more well balanced when you're leading and you're mentoring them. So a couple of questions that I'd like for us to discuss, and that is, which step in the navigation process do you find most difficult? So just thinking back over the navigation, past experience, whether that's struggling, with your mistakes, conditions before making. What do you struggle most with? Who's willing to share? Jumping in before planning. Who's willing to share? Unmute and share with us so we know, because it's encouraging. Anyone? Were you unmuting, Amy? I felt like I saw you unmute.
I wasn't. I'm reviewing the steps here. I'm not afraid to share. I just need to look at the steps again.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one while you guys are thinking about that, because I have an example. Number 5, describe a situation in which you had skipped one of the steps in navigation and what was the outcome. And so I had forgotten about this, but at this time that we were doing this, I was leading one of the ministries in the church. I've always ended up filling in and doing that. But I had here, when I was leading children's ministry, I did not communicate with my teams. I didn't count the cost enough. I didn't plan it enough. And our Easter event was not as big as it could have been, because we had a huge amount of people at church, but the event in children's did not pan out because I skipped the navigation, and mine was the conditions before making the commitments. I think that was part of it. And so that's very interesting to me as I look at that. That was one of the times. But does anyone have anything from step 3 that you want to share? If not, we can move on.
Is there, where's the list? Is there like a bullet point list or not really?
It's just, well, I'm looking right here. So if you look, the navigators draw on past experience. Did you not do that? Or examine the conditions before making? It's that list of navigators. Do you see it on pages 37, 38?
Oh, in the workbook?
Yes. Yep.
I think the workbook and the book are a tiny bit different. That's why it's,
They are a little bit. It's interesting.
yeah. The book numbers them clearly. The workbook Doesn't.
Okay, okay, yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's quite a bit different, isn't it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Lisa, I have an example of you actually helping someone navigate at the very first retreat. I thought it was so interesting because this one level one of mine opened up and you totally just really pinpointed some stuff that she was struggling with. But the thing I remember about what you shared with her is that you basically helped her to see that it wasn't just her that struggled, because she had this idea in her mind that nobody else struggled like her in her business.
Mm.
But you definitely held the mirror to help her recognize that the things that she was going through weren't just like special to her. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when they start the journey. It's kind of like they're circling the mountain going up, and and you have gone through that path already. You've been through that roadblock or whatever. And so I just thought it was interesting because, and maybe it's just human nature to assume that we're the only one that's that struggle. But I remember you really helping her see that the things that she was struggling with wasn't just special to her. And I think it really encouraged her that it was normal. Like, oh, I'm normal.
Right, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Okay. Any other thoughts?
I think one that you were asking what when we struggle with, Lise, was that your question?
Yes.
I think one of the ones that I struggle with sometimes, and I feel like you and I balance each other in this, is the navigators listen to what others have to say. Because I can tend to be like, we need to make sure our whole team's on board, or that at least we have the ownership of our leaders, and that we have the investment of our leaders, and that they're in on what we want to do, which I do think is super important. But then sometimes a leader just has to make a call and just say, this is what we're doing and this is where we're going. You know what I mean? And so I think Lisa and I, we tend to balance each other in that, because I tend to worry more like we need to bring everybody in on the decision making, and sometimes you're more like, we're the leaders, we're going to make the call, but I think both are important, and sometimes one is more important than the other in certain times even. Do you know what I mean? But that would be sometimes for me, knowing when to make the call and when to be like, if we don't have our leaders buy in, then why are we even doing it? It's going to be a waste of our time as well. Do you know what I mean? So finding that balance.
And I think, don't you think that's part of being intuitive? Knowing when to lean in and when to not lean in to a certain thing. That's why it's good to looking at the people that you surround yourself with, because that's who you become and that's how you become. This was encouraging to me when he said on page 42 in the book, when he said, I should probably confess at this point that I'm not a strong navigator. I don't take joy in getting into details. I tend to go with my gut instinct, sometimes a little too quickly for my own good. And that's exactly me. I tend to go with my gut instincts. But that doesn't excuse me from the details. And that's, Amy's always great at the details. And that's always been an area that I don't like at all. But I'm seeing that as I commit to the process again. I feel like I keep hitting that process because I just feel like we need that. I know we need the navigational part, but you have to yield to that process. And as I'm doing that more, and I know things seem to come easier as I'm doing it. Megan, you had always said, and you've shared this, I feel like I keep using you as an example, but it's been 7 years, of stories. It's been good. Growing intuition is a good thing. Yes. But one of the things that you said, it's like that you can't really explain it, but it's when you're doing the things and you're reaching out to people. Sometimes it's not even those people you're reaching out to, but you'll have someone else message you and be like, hey, I want to order the triplex. Do you have time to whatever? And it's just like this. It's just weird like that. And we can't really explain it, but it's like this. It just works. Doing the process works, and yielding to that process will create that. And then adding that navigation piece as a leader, you can do the process, but then as you have the team, You got to be able to navigate for that team. But we're going to learn from our mistakes, and we're going to do that. I like what he has on page 43 under charting the course with navigation strategy. And it was back in 75. He talks about the process. He wrote an acrostic that he would always be able to remember. And it was plan ahead, predetermine that course of action, lay out your goals, adjust your priorities, notify key personnel, allow time for acceptance, head into action, expect problems, always point to the successes, daily review your plan. So when you're thinking about even your team and doing an event, this is things that Amy and I do a lot together, which we don't ever look at it this way, but when we plan, we try and figure out all of these things. And as a leader, you're going to have to adjust when you need to adjust. There are going to be things that on the fly you're going to have to adjust with, and be okay with that. And that just because you have to make an adjustment, it could be a messenger event party, a learning event, that you have a new person that you said, hey, let's do this learning event. And then they message you and they say, oh, I'm going to Susie's game and I don't have time. I'm invested and I'm doing the things. I would make the time. I've done these messenger parties walking through Target. You can work this business pretty stinking easy when you can walk through Target and do a messenger event. Okay. Scanning my red card and going, oh, hold on just a second. And I'm finishing this question. Here you go. So, but how did I get off on that? I don't even know. But when we get discouraged and we think, oh, we can't do that, right? But as you're learning and you're growing, you need to sometimes change things midstream and go, yep, okay, that's no big deal. We'll do it another night. Oh, this didn't work. We did this messenger event. How many times have we done an event and you have no engagement and people said that you added them and nothing happened? You got to pivot. So that's part of that, adjusting your priorities, and just being able to pivot when you need to pivot. And all of these things, and I have found through personal growth that when I'm looking and I remember when I first started listening to, I would listen to the different people that resonated with me. Sarah Marble was a diamond that I just resonated with her, or she resonated with me rather. And I would listen. I had a little notebook and I would watch every single thing. I did that with Jessica, every single thing. And I would write down all the things. This is before we had all the things in our back office. But I remember that, I don't even remember what I was going to say. I just literally drew a blank. I can't remember. It must not. Oh gosh, I don't remember now. What was my point in saying that? Oh, they would say, when you're listening to someone and they say, I had all these, it was so hard. Sometimes it can get overwhelming when you're hearing people that have had great success, or maybe they're just someone that has ranked up to the rank that you want to be, like a ruby, and maybe you're a senior gold, or maybe you're a gold and you're like, I just need to get to senior ruby so I can get beyond that. Sometimes it's easy to get that pileup effect because we're hearing people say, which is good to know that we're learning from our mistakes or learning from the failures. We can get the pileup effect and think, I can't pivot that much. I'm not going to be able to make all these changes. How am I ever going to predetermine my course? And don't get in the weeds of all of the things that you're reading and think, I can't do this, it's too much. All of these people that have been successful, whether they've written these books or whether they've made it to the top of Plexus and every other company, they've done these things one step at a time. They didn't do them all at once. I'm not going to do them all at once. And I can get overwhelmed very easily. Just ask those around me that I can get overwhelmed easily if I get my mind on that big pile of laundry in my laundry room. If I can just go, okay, I'm going to separate my things out now. I'm just going to do, guess what? After a while, your pile's gone. And it's the same way with working your business. When you submit to the process, you do it day in and day out, you will end up seeing the results that you want to see. If you don't do that, you're not going to see the results. So let's all submit to that process and encourage one another. I like that, trusting our judgments. That's so good. Thank you for putting that. Because if you're an indecisive person, that intuitiveness will be maybe difficult for you. And so you have to learn all the way of trusting your judgments, trusting that as you develop in intuitiveness, you will develop that as you get going. And you're just going to know, I have to do this for my business. I'm going to reach out to this person today because you've been doing it day in, day out, day in, day out. You're learning from your mistakes and it's just going to become like a natural thing. Your conversations that you have with people in person are going to be more natural about what we do, because you've already been doing it for so long. It's just part of breathing in, breathing out. This is what you do. What do you do? Oh yeah, that's it's easy to be able to communicate it when you're doing it all the time consistently. So it's 8:27. Megan, do you have anything else that you'd like to add, or anyone else? So next week, it's going to be somebody different leading, and it's Amy. Yay. So do your homework for next week, and it's going to be 5 and 6. So that's going to be exciting. Thank you for joining. We're loving this. We will see you next week, everybody. Love you all.